Okay, so today we're going to go over slow speed handpieces and how they operate, different types of attachments that you'll see, and different models that you'll see. Okay, so the main thing to remember is slow speeds operate under 100,000 RPM. If we remember, high speeds operate 400,000 RPM. Slow speeds are significantly slower than that. The most common that you're going to see is 5,000 to 20,000. 5,000 is specifically designed for the hygienist. She's going to use that to polish your teeth after she's done cleaning. They ask what flavor you want, bubble gum and whatever other good flavors that they have, mint. That's what she's doing. She's going to polish your teeth afterwards. They keep it very slow because they don't want to rub off all the enamel and everything else on your teeth, so they have to keep it at a very slow rotation. 20,000 is what the doctor's going to use. We'll get a little bit further into it, but that's where he's going to do some adjustments, chair side. Not necessarily actually drilling the cavity, but having to do tweaks and adjustments. Most slow speeds do not use water. And if they do use water, it's usually external irrigation. It's usually just to clean and get debris out of the way. It's really not designed like when the doctor's using it. It's a completely different type of irrigation setup. Typical uses: removing caries, refinishing cavity preparation, prophylaxis, which is what the hygienist is going to do, and doing chair side adjustments. These are probably the most common brands you're going to run into. On Midwest, you'll run into a True Torque, a Shorty, and a Rhino. The Shorty is probably the most common. The True Torque and the Shorty have two-speed operations. They can operate at 5,000 or 20,000. They basically have an air bleed adjustment built into them. When it's closed and the maximum air pressure is reaching the handpiece, it operates at 20,000. When you open the air bleed, obviously it allows air to escape, which slows down the rotation of the handpiece, allows it to operate at 5,000. Star has the Titan motor, which again, with the Titan motor, you'll have either 5,000 or 20,000, and it'll actually say it like laser engraved on the motor. It'll say 5,000 or 20,000. NSK, which would technically be the E-type. And E-type is a very generic, what you're going to hear. You're going to hear everything referred to as E-type. No matter what brand it is, Henry Schein has their own brand. Patterson has their own brand. You'll find 1,000 different brands of E-type motors out there. It's the most common motor you'll run into. Cavo and W&H also have their own specific E-type motor that's geared towards all their attachments, but you can use a lot of other E-type attachments on Cavo, and W&H motors. And then, like I said, other off-brands. You'll run into every Joe Schmo brand out there that's got an E-type motor. So what attaches to the motors, you have two different types of attachments. You've got a straight nose cone, and then you've got a contra angle. Straight nose cones take what's called a slow speed burr. All the burrs you guys have been working with are those very small and very thin high speed burrs. A slow speed burr is a lot bigger and a lot thicker. It's actually the same size as a Dremel burr. And then contra angles, you'll see a two-part contra angle where you have the body, which is called the sheath, and then you actually have the angled head. That will allow the doctor a little bit easier access to do inside the mouth adjustments, or if he's got to get somewhere small, he'll use that. The straight are usually used for outside of the mouth because they're a lot bigger. It's just, he can do denture adjustments and things outside of the mouth. The contra angles take what's called a latch grip burr, where the actual back side of the burr has a cutout on it, and it's got a swing latch or a push button latch that will actually latch onto the burr and hold it in place. If you run into a W&H contra angle, they do not have detachable heads. All the other contra angles on the market, Star and SK Midwest, you can actually remove that contra angled head off of the sheath and replace it. It's most commonly what's going to go bad. 9 times out of 10, the sheath will usually never go bad. Very rarely will the sheaths actually go bad. It's the head that ends up going bad. The heads are very inexpensive and they're very, very easy to replace. It's field serviceable. You can order the parts yourself. You can do it yourself. It's just unscrewing it off, chucking it away, and screwing on the new head, lubricate it, and give it back to the doctor. Cavo contra angle heads detach by twisting the body and are more expensive. So Cavo has their own brand of heads. The most common heads you'll see out there, they all have different numbers and letters to signify rotation speed, quality, and things like that. So the way the Cavo head unscrews though is at the top of the neck you'll see a little locking collar. It's a reverse thread. You have to spin it backwards for it to loosen, and then you pull the head off. You can aftermarket replace the head. You have access to aftermarket off-brand replacements of those Cavo heads. They're obviously a lot more expensive than the inexpensive contra angle heads that we were just talking about, where you just pop them off and throw them away. Most of the heads that are out there, including the Cavos, aren't repairable. So if a bearing goes bad in it, you're not going to rebuild that type of head. One, to take them apart, and it's a nightmare to take them apart. And two, because especially the cost on these inexpensive ones, it's just, nobody does it. If you send them to us, we're not going to take them apart. We're going to say, listen, you're just replacing the whole thing. So they are field serviceable. You guys can do them on your truck. We'll show you how to take them apart and repair them. The Micro Motor and Athena Champion are permanent slow speeds with a permanent head attached to them. So like we were just talking about the straight nose cone attachment, those all come on and off. There's a couple micro motors that you'll run into out there that are just permanent. They're all fixed together. It's one solid unit. You put your burr right into the unit. The nose and the the nose and the motor are all connected, and you just put the head on that you need, or the doctor needs, or the hygienist needs, and then you just go to work. It's not serviceable, or not separable, sorry. And again, you'll find a bunch of off-brands on those make models. Profis are typically a lot smaller and a lot lighter. If you run into an office and you see a very small motor sitting on a delivery unit, most likely it's a Profi motor. Hygienists use them. As we all know, most hygienists out there are female, small hands, and they like small motors. So there's a lot of companies out there that will make a very small, lightweight Profi handpiece. And because it doesn't need to operate at an extremely high RPM, and it does not need an extreme amount of torque, they can keep them very small in compact packages. On all slow speeds, there's two types of chucks. There's a friction grip. Oh, I'm sorry. On the Profis we're still on. A friction grip which will only take plastic Profi heads. That's a very important. That's a very important fact. The hygienist, when she's doing the polishing on your teeth, she's going to put what's called a Profi cup, or they'll call it a Profi angle, on that. It's plastic, it's disposable. They buy them in boxes of hundreds, 200s at a time. Before each patient, she'll take a new one out of a bag, they're individually wrapped, and she'll put it on for that patient at the time. That's where she'll put her polishing paste, toothpaste, whatever she's using in it. They have a plastic, it's almost like a plastic burr on the end of it that slides in to the chuck. Okay? The second type will use a metal chuck. Okay? You cannot put a metal burr into a Profi specific handpiece. You will stretch the chuck and then it won't work properly. So if a hygienist gives you a slow speed that she's using and she says, my Profies, they drop right in, they're not spinning, they're sliding off, it's probably because maybe she didn't do it or somebody else did it. Somebody decided to jam a metal burr into that handpiece and stretch the chuck out. When you have a chuck that opens and closes, where it's got a locking collar, that's the ones that will take the metal burrs. They'll also take the plastic ones, but that's the ones that are designed to take metal burrs. If it's a friction grip, like the small Profies, only plastic. And that's one question you can ask when you're out there. If she tells you her Profi angles are just falling off, they're not spinning properly, hey, did anybody jam a metal burr down in there? And then you can start evaluating it. And if they did, it's going to have to be repaired. It's not something that's just, tighten a screw down or something. Actually, the chuck has to get a full repair done to it. Hygienists can use any of the previous style handpieces. Again, even like we were talking about on a couple slides before, the Midwest Shorty and the Midwest True Torque, because they are multi-speed adjustment, the hygienist can use them. All she's got to do is open the bleed, and it drops it down to 5,000. The biggest issue hygienists have with them is they're very big. So she's trying to do light polishing work, and she's got a handpiece that's literally that big that she's trying to work with instead of a nice small little Profi motor. So they have a lot of options, just sometimes they don't like their options. And just like with high speeds that we go over, there's a lot of different manufacturers out there that offer both 20,000 and 5,000 motors. Star and Midwest are probably going to be the most common ones that you'll see out there. Cabo and W&H are very popular. NSK, again, we talked about that E-type motor, and that E-type is just a generic name for that motor. And the Athena Champion is kind of a specific one that you're going to see familiar with hygienists. It's an inexpensive motor. It's a complete, nose cone and motor all in one. And the price point is pretty good on them, so you see them pretty often. Ta-da!